To our Croatian journalist, I'm afraid to pronounce the name. Croatia hasn't joined yet, so we haven't all learned how to speak Croatian, but it's coming soon, I'm sure. I just wondered, very interesting, did you have any personal danger in this? Have you been threatened? How has it been for you? Because this is risky business. And what do you think we should do? What should this committee recommend? What would you like to see us propose?
To Mr. Margetić and his experiences in Croatia. Well, that's really quite a story you've told us, but nonetheless, I'm wondering whether there isn't something missing in this whole story. All this money, all these banks were used over a very long period. You talked about 1990 until 2007. You said the government knew and was even involved. But between 1990 and 2007, there were a number of elections in different governments. There were Social Democrats and governments from the right. So are you saying that no matter who the politicians are, they're all part of the system, they're all involved, and if that's the case, it's not just about money, it's about a completely autonomous system that doesn't depend on the elections. What determines the system, and what becomes of the money? Does the system still exist? Is it still this money from these transactions that's in control of the situation in Croatia? Croatia is coming into the EU. So are you saying that it's completely controlled by this money that was accumulated between 1990 and 2007? Because if that's the case, then that goes far beyond the scope of this committee. But it's nonetheless very interesting. I have a question for our Croatian speaker. We went along to Croatia and the Internal Market Committee. We were interested in procurement and tariffs, and it seemed to me that much had improved in Croatia. What I'd like to know is whether you think much of this has been resolved. That is, where the guilty parties have been prosecuted, the money has been recovered. So it's of interest to us, even though accession is a done deal. It would nonetheless be useful to find out from you whether anything has changed, where things now stand. What we heard happened in the past, I'm sure you've heard this, is that Germany was also involved, a German bank in the south of Germany, with this whole mess with the HYPO Bank and so on. So that's my question. Do you think things have improved?
The first was actually the issue of banking secret mentioned in one MP's question. Well, I can tell you from my experience, at the moment I'm at court in Croatia because of revealing banking secret, and HYPO Alpe Adria Bank, which is private prosecutor, is asking for me as a journalist 1 to 5 years in prison because revealing such a crime. They even were so arrogant, just to explain you, they wrote this document. And this is admission from HYPO Alpe Adria Group in Croatia that all the facts and documents and articles I published about the scandal are true and exact, but they completely are banking secret, and that's why I have to be punished as a journalist. So obviously something needs to be done with banking secret to regulate it differently. Otherwise, you will not have anybody talking about corruption in banks in future. You will not have journalists discovering these corruption scandals, because we will be afraid of imprisonment. And this is ongoing process in Croatia. Nobody actually stood in front and said, okay, we need to protect our whistleblowers and journalists in Croatia when they talk about corruption. But they protect HYPO Alpe Adria Group. You don't have any, not a single one, process or prosecution against HYPO Group Alpe Adria for money laundering and corruption in Croatia, or against responsible persons of HYPO Group Alpe Adria. Some of them are still managing their job as nothing happened. And we are talking billions of euros. So this is something what you as members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, can regulate other way. You can, especially because Croatia is going to be a member of the European Union after 1st of July, and any of your decision is going to be obligatory for Croatia. So this is about banking secret. They cover up huge criminal and corruption behind the story of banking secret. One MP asked me about the dangers for journalists in Croatia revealing such stories. Well, of course, it's dangerous in Croatia to tell the truth. I often tell and write that the truth is the cheapest in Croatia and the lie is the most expensive one. If you write lies, then you are good and well-paid journalist in Croatia. And if you write about HYPO and such scandals, you are underpaid or no paid at all. So we, as an investigative journalist, not only myself, but my colleagues also, are facing huge dangers in Croatia. We don't have any kind of protection from the authorities. We don't have a law about protection of corruption reporters, so-called whistleblowers, or law which would protect journalists in such cases. I demanded from the President of the Republic a year ago to get the initiative from him to propose this law for protection of corruption reporters, and we talked that in this law there should be mechanisms to protect investigative journalists when they discover corruption. He promised it a year ago. Now he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And social democratic government don't want to talk about it either. We don't have any kind of dialogue with them. Why? Then we come to the question of MP Zondergaard. Something is missing in my previous story. And the main issue is basically this is the same group of people. They are all the same. They all have fingers in the jam, to say it figuratively, in this story. You know, in present government we have Prime Minister whose brother, just before the elections, he got suspectful credit from LHB Bank, which is on the money laundering list in HYPO scandal. And you know, when actual Prime Minister's brother got this credit from LHB Bank, the president of LHB Bank was Heinz Truskaller, former president of HYPO Alpe Adria Bank in Zagreb. He escaped from Zagreb and became LHB Bank president. So this is one of the examples. The other one is present Minister of Justice. He was connected to HYPO scandal through Europa Press Holding, one of the major media houses in Croatia. He actually was involved in money laundering operation with HYPO Consultants Group, which was bought by the owner of Europa Press Holding in Croatia, so major media tycoon, Ninoslav Pavić. We have also Minister of Police, Minister of Interior, who was director, one of directors, members of board of directors of Europa Press Holding as media house, while Europa Press Holding was involved in HYPO scandal. So two key figures, two key ministers who should investigate HYPO scandal in Croatia, one of Justice, the other of Interior, are actually involved in this scandal. And you cannot expect from them to be involved in any kind of investigation against the HYPO. We have also Minister of Finance who was at one point lobbying for HYPO Group when BLB Bank, Bayerische Landesbank, bought HYPO Group, and they had to get approval from Croatian National Bank to take over HYPO Group in Croatia. At first, governor of Croatian National Bank didn't want to give them that approval because he already had indications of money laundering operations and organized crime. He had several reports of Foreign Currency Inspectorate, of intelligence community in Croatia, of police, state attorney. But Mr. Linic, who is at present Minister of Finance in Social Democratic government, he was one of the lobbyists for BLB and HYPO Group, for them to get this approval from Croatian National Bank. After he came at the seat of Minister of Finance a year and a half ago, he appointed as one of his crucial associates a person who was the main person for covering up HYPO scandal in Sanader's government. She was chief of Financial Inspectorate during the Sanader's government. Now she's main associate of Mr. Linic in Social Democrat government. So I think this explains all to you, Mr. Zondergaard. Unfortunately, we don't have any kind of support from such political infrastructure. Unfortunately, we don't have a support from State Attorney's Office. I collaborated with State Attorney's Office and Office for Prosecution of Corruption, so-called USKOK in Croatian, from the March of 2008. That was the first point. For example, I gave them the documents about Sanader case, taking bribery from HYPO Group during the war. And as some of you probably know, they needed 4 years to activate that case. They had all the data, they had all the documents. They simply didn't want to do anything until the political moment was convenient. Then they did it. The same is now. Nothing of the HYPO scandal in Croatia is being prosecuted. Nothing. You don't have one case for money laundering in HYPO case in Croatia. This is to blame. The main guilty part in this story is for sure State Attorney himself, Mr. Mladen Bajić. If he cannot prosecute it, then make him say publicly. Who doesn't give you? Parliament? Who is in charge of you? Government? President of the Republic? But he has to say it publicly. Why he is not prosecuting HYPO scandal. And we are talking about 47.7 billions of euros. One MP said, okay, now money from the European funds is going to come to Croatia during the accession process, and what is going to happen with this money. But I ask another question. What is going to happen with this money I'm talking about, which was taken out of the country, and these are public funds, public finances? Let's make what European Parliament can do. It can make some kind of parliamentary pressure to Croatia to investigate this scandal, to return as much of that money as it can be returned. Some of it surely can, because we know all the way where it finished, to the companies, to the private persons, in real estate operations and so on. So some of it, maybe most of it, can be returned to Croatia. And it's much more than Croatia will get from the European funds. And if you ask me, is there any doubt that European funds are going to be used properly? Of course there is. Of course there is. Because there are no clear mechanisms of control. There are no clear mechanisms of transparency in using these funds. When you come to Croatia and ask, okay, have you transparent procedures for dealing with these funds and so on. Of course, they will make you reports that everything is transparent and everything is legal, everything is public, and everything is well used. But it's not, because the same people who misused Croatian funds earlier are dealing now with this. And we don't have, because there is no pressure to them to make it legal, to make it transparent. This is where you surely can help, as a kind of pressure to them. As I said earlier, as a European Parliament, you can also help us, that you can make a pressure to Croatia to get this law for protection of persons who talk about corruption, to protect. So you can insist to Croatia to get a law on protection of corruption reporters and investigative journalists generally, because you will have silence in Croatia if you don't do that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.